Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Brigadier General M.A. Jamangile, the Chaplain General of the South African National Defence Force, is requested to lead us in scripture reading and prayer.
All expressions of faith are respected on this parade. Our scripture lesson reads as follows. The greatest love a person can have for his friends is to give his life for them. As we commemorate the memories of the warriors of SABC who paid the supreme price in maritime disaster, the story of true sacrifice, courage, bravery amidst tremendous odds. Our God Almighty reminds us this morning that there's no one than this, that they laid down their lives for their country and her peoples. And therefore, as God's people, we have no right to forget what God remembers. The SABC soldiers clearly understood that when you have a living faith in a living God, the past will be not dead history. It throbs with living realities. Today, this parade peals forth that we are not done. We will never be done. In God's presence, we are united in our determination as the South African National Defence Force to continue to build on the legacy of the warriors of SABC. In conclusion, Commander-in-Chief, we are called on behalf of God to offer to the people of our country the power of God's love. God still calls to us, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And through our love for God and our country, we give only possible answer. Here we are. Send us. Send us. Send us. God bless you. Let us pray. We now lift this parade unto your throne of grace. Amen.
The President of the Republic of South Africa and the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force, His Excellency Mr. Ramaphosa, is requested to address the parade.
Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, Premier of Limpopo Province, Mr. Stanley Chupu Matabata, Ministers of Defense from fraternal countries in our SADC region and as far afield as from Cuba. We are delighted that the Minister of Defense from Cuba has been able to travel this long distance to join us. Ministers and deputy ministers of our government, MECs, Mayor of Polokwane and councillors, Secretary of Defense, Dr. Sam Gulube, Chief of the South African National Defence Force, General Soli Shoke, members of the Military Command Council, generals, admirals, officers and officials, non-commissioned officers, members of the diplomatic corps, soldiers on parade, military veterans, religious leaders who are amongst us, distinguished guests, and fellow South Africans. As Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force, it is my honor and my privilege to be here today, particularly to honor our men and women in uniform. Armed Forces Day is commemorated annually to pay tribute to the soldiers of our nation who perished in the English Channel in 1917 on board the SS Mendi during the First World War. We do this so that the sacrifice that they paid should never ever be forgotten. We honor the men and women who protect our borders and those who have gone before, who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. We are a proud people, and we are proud of the progress we have made in ensuring that from the desperate apartheid-era armed forces, a single, united, uniquely South African National Defence Force has been born and has emerged. The SANDF is an enduring symbol of our rainbow nation and includes in its ranks black and white, men and women. Through loyalty and discipline in defending our territorial integrity and sovereignty, through your involvement in conflict resolution and peacemaking efforts on our continent, and through your heroic roles during natural disasters, both here at home and in our neighboring countries, the SANDF indeed makes us proud to be South African. You are a symbol of our pride and our national unity. Only 10 days ago, we commemorated the 30th anniversary of the release of the SANDF's first Commander-in-Chief, President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. We should not forget that historic day, which dramatically changed our country's political trajectory and led to the peaceful transition to democracy, and which brought the SANDF into existence. We mark Armed Forces Day this year at a time when South Africa has assumed the chairship of the African Union for 2020. This is a great responsibility to lead our continent towards peace, unity and prosperity, envisaged many years ago by our forebears like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Patrice Lumumba, Albert Luthuli, Oliver Tambo, Thomas Sankara, and Kenneth Kaunda. In May this year, South Africa will host the extraordinary summit of the African Union to address the issue of silencing the guns, one of the AU's pillars as an agenda. This summit will provide an opportunity to assess the implementation of the AU Master Plan and at the same time respond to emerging developments on the African peace and security landscape. As a continent, we have set milestones towards the attainment of a better and safer continent for all Africans, but our progress remains mixed. Conflict continues in several African countries, undermining our collective efforts to achieve peace and security. South Africa looks to the SANDF to assist us to meet our obligations with regards to supporting continental peace and security. A lot, therefore, lies on the shoulders of the SANDF, the men and women who make us proud as South Africans. On this 2020 Armed Forces Day, we remember all the heroes and heroines in the SANDF who put their lives on the line to serve their country and their continent. In our quest to silence the guns on our continent, we acknowledge the enduring challenges of armed conflict in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger in North Africa, in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, and in the Great Lakes region. We are delighted that South Sudan is now advancing to a situation of greater peace, as tomorrow they will inaugurate a united transitional government. And we hope and trust that through that, the guns in that country will have been silenced. Our Deputy President will be in attendance as the transitional government is inaugurated. We count on the South African National Defence Force as an organ mandated by the AU and the UN respectively to discharge the important responsibility of promoting peace. I commend our soldiers for staying true to this course and despite the many challenges they face. On this Armed Forces Day, we show appreciation for the service rendered by our soldiers who, despite limited numbers, ensure that the 4,800 kilometers of our vast border is patrolled. The companies deployed along the South Africa border with Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Mozambique continue to make great strides in curtailing illegal actions in their area of responsibility. These men and women do remarkable work in safeguarding our borders and in assisting the South African Police Service with crime prevention. We commend them, knowing that the vast stretch of our border requires far more resources on the ground. As a nation, we owe a great debt of appreciation to our National Defence Force for being not just a fighting force, but a developmental force. They don't just bear guns, they also bear shovels and do the real work. Across our country, we've seen the SANDF render essential services through the deployment of health professionals at public health facilities that are in crisis. We have seen our men and women in uniform repair sewage infrastructure along the Vaal River and in the northwest. Our forces have built bridges in rural areas, carrying picks and shovels to give isolated communities access to places and services they would not be able to reach otherwise. And our forces are active in firefighting, as well as mountain and maritime search and rescue operations. In undertaking these diverse programs, the SANDF draws on the talents and the energies of young South Africans. The military skills development system is an important front in our nation's battle against youth unemployment. I'm therefore pleased that the program for the 2020 Armed Forces Day included a military careers showcase. I hope that young people who wish to develop themselves and grow South Africa will indeed embrace these opportunities, through which they will make an important contribution to the security and the sustainability of our nation. We recognize that we have come a long way in the past 25 years. We have to continue growing our defense industry, especially as it makes a significant contribution in our country's economy. To strengthen the relationship between defense industry and the armed forces, we have launched the National Defense Industry Council. This development aims to support the defense industry with export opportunities while also meeting the SANDF's material needs. We've also launched the Defense Industry Fund with the objective of growing the local defense industry and servicing the SANDF and external clients. We are starting to see the fruits of this intervention in our military. Our Armaments Cooperation, AMSCO, is also integrally involved in these processes and continues to provide major acquisition and project management capabilities. South Africans should be proud that their military is providing opportunities to small and medium enterprises and contributing to stimulating local economies where bases are situated. This we have done through Project Kobatlala. To this effect, the SANDF has entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Small Business Development to raise the department's spend on small and medium enterprises from 30% to 50% and create a wonderful lifeline for startups and budding entrepreneurs. I challenge you to ensure that women-owned businesses access a significant chunk of this procurement in line with the call by the African Union for the allocation of at least 25% of public procurement to women-owned businesses instead of the current 1%. Compatriots, I want to commend the Minister, Mapisa Ngakula, for establishing the Ministerial Task Team against sexual exploitation and abuse in the military. The task team is currently hard at work to rid our military of incidents of sexual exploitation and abuse which go against the grain of our military ethos and character, and which violate the very principles on which our democracy is founded. These are steps in the right direction to address the disgraceful behavior of a few men, and which will give weight to our efforts to end violence against women on our continent. During our tenure as African Union Chair, we will make the adoption of the AU Convention on Violence Against Women a priority and urge member states to ratify the international protocols that outlaw gender discrimination. The global climate crisis threatens our continent more than most, contributing to resource scarcity and instability. It has the potential to aggravate security issues. As chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, I will ensure that South Africa prioritizes mitigation, adaptation, and support as we address climate change. As Commander-in-Chief, I will keenly follow the initiative that the Defense Minister took with a campaign to plant trees, not bombs, in Durban in November 2019. I was particularly pleased this morning that we were able, in our wreath-laying ceremony, to plant a tree, signifying that, yes, we will want to plant trees and not bombs. The Under-Secretary General Fabrizio Drummond of the UN was also part of this initiative and urged UN members to plant 75 million trees as part of mitigating climate change. I urge the SANDF to expand this initiative in partnership with other government entities. I conclude. As I do so, I wish to pay tribute to one of our own, the late Chief of the South African Army, Lieutenant Thabiso Mokgosi, who we laid to rest in December 2019. He would have been with us today. He has left us a rich legacy of his total commitment to serve the people of South Africa, a deep sense of patriotism and humility. In his memory, let us continue serving this country with the highest form of loyalty and redouble our efforts to ensure that South Africans feel safe and remain safe. This, the men and women of the South African National Defence Force, is your calling. And we would like you to live up to that calling. And we send you, therefore, to ensure that the people of South Africa feel secure, knowing that you are around to protect them and to be the patriots that they look forward to from your activities. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the mass fly past and an air display will now commence. Please be reminded that they will be approaching from your front view.
Ladies and gentlemen, the aircraft that you will see in the mass flypast today come from all the squadrons and bases in the South African Air Force. The Chief of the South African Air Force, Lieutenant General F.Z. Nsimang, PSCJ, ENSP, leads an Air Force that is positioned to inspire confidence amongst the nation it serves. The helicopters participating in the flypast display a combination of the modern sophistication of helicopter operations in the South African Air Force helicopter line. The lead aircraft in the helicopter formation is an Augusta A109 light utility helicopter. This formation of various South African Air Force helicopters is led by Major Jono Sterling from 87 Helicopter Flying School from Air Force Base Bloemspruit. The Augusta A109 and the Super Lynx helicopters were acquired by the South African Air Force as part of the strategic defense packages and are a valuable part of the Air Force helicopter fraternity. The Rooivalk was designed and built in South Africa in coordination with Denel. It is an attack helicopter used in the ground suppression, anti-armor, reconnaissance, close air support and counter-insurgency roles. The Rooivalk attack helicopter has been employed very effectively against the M23 rebel forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo in support of the MONUSCO Force Intervention Brigade. The Rooivalk is operated by 16 Squadron, also based at Air Force Base Bloemspruit in Bloemfontein. The Oryx is the South African Air Force's medium utility helicopter and is utilized for reconnaissance, airborne command and control, search and rescue, amongst other operations. The Augusta A109 is used for command and control tasks and light communication flights. Ladies and gentlemen, helicopter formation.
Ladies and gentlemen, following from your point from your front view is the pointer formation, consisting of a King Air aircraft and a Cessna 208 aircraft from 41 Squadron and a Casa 212 from 44 Squadron. Both squadrons are based at Air Force Base Waterkloof. Ladies and gentlemen, pointer formation.
Our next formation is Jumbo Formation. This formation consists of a C-130BZ medium transport aircraft operated by 28 Squadron based at Air Force Base Waterkloof. Together with the C-130 are the Silver Falcon Formation aerobatic team flying the Pilatus PC-7 Mark II Astra aircraft. The Silver Falcons are the South African Air Force's official aerobatic display team based at Central Flying School at Air Force Base Langebaan. Jumbo Formation.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Hawk Formation is led by Major Pumelelo Nzuta, the training coordinator at 85 Combat Flying School, based at...
Jumbo Formation, correct?
Correct.
All right. What is that big aircraft used for mainly?
The C-130 is mainly used as a troop carrier for the 2nd Air Force.
Right.
It's utilized in the mission area to transport our troops into the mission area.
Right.
Also, it does cargo drops, both light and heavy cargo drops as required.
Now, these are the aircraft that many have come to see. Just listen to this sound, folks. It really gets the motor running. Tell us more about that.
Now, what the viewers just saw, it is the Hawk Mark II fighter trainer aircraft. So a leading trainer for students. Once they qualify the Central Flying School of the PC-7s, then they will move on to the Hawk lead trainer.
So my understanding about the Hawk is that it's a transonic lead-in fighter trainer. Is that how you would describe it?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
It's a lead-in to the Gripen fighter aircraft, which will be next. If you look at the screen, you'll see the Gripen fighter, a combat fighter aircraft coming through. It is stationed in Makado at 2 Squadron.
At the right time there, Colonel, because that sound, that vibration just gets to you, isn't it? It's such an impressive machine in the sky.
It is, yes. In that formation of Gripen aircraft from Makado, It is used in a strike role, pre-planned strikes as a reconnaissance aircraft as well, and it's also actually employed in a maritime role in support of the naval forces if required.
Right. How many do we have of those?
I cannot really disclose how many we have, as you would understand.
Right.
But we have sufficient to
I try, Colonel.
Thank you very much for understanding.
Look, something that's very interesting with regards to the Hawk formation is that it features somebody that has become known to South Africans, Major Mandisa Mfeka, the first African female fighter pilot of the South African Air Force. Talk to us about the talk among your colleagues with regards to the achievement from Major Mfeka. What does it mean for the South African Air Force?
Major Mfeka's achievement is not only her personal achievement, but it's more an organization's achievement as well as the country. As you know, we're celebrating 25 years of democracy today. However, it's only now recently that a black female has qualified as a fighter pilot in the South African Air Force. And the message it sends is that the South African Air Force is working hard to make sure that in terms of gender, we make sure that whether female or male, you can achieve anything you apply your mind to.
You know, my executive producer, Mpume, did a piece with regards to recruitment and opportunities within the South African National Defence Force. Talk to us about opportunities for the youth especially, because the President in his address just now mentioned, about this, I guess, exhibitions that the military has had over the past couple of days, encouraging youth to take up opportunities in the South African National Defence Force. Talk to us about the Air Force in particular. What sort of opportunities are there?
Many opportunities in the South African Air Force. And also, actually, one of the reasons for this event is also to communicate with the public what they see. It is the opportunities that are out there for them. And they can be, almost every profession out there is available in the South African Air Force. They can be pilots, they can be navigators. They can be, in the South African Air Force, we've got also doctors that work in the South African Air Force. Right. So all the professions that are out there are in the South African Air Force. Recently, the South African Air Force has gone on a drive in terms of recruitment in order to fill the post as we go, to make sure that we've got sufficient professions to carry out our missions.
You know, some would say it's easier said than done to take up certain opportunities that are there. But what are some of the requirements, be it physical, academically, in terms of getting to the South African Air Force?
In the South African Air Force, especially when you want to be a pilot or a navigator for that matter, you need to have obviously mathematics, you need to have science from school, because that is the primary requirement before you can enter service.
So what sort of marks are we talking about here?
I do not have the exact grades that are required.
We'll just pause on that. What just flew past there? What are we looking at now?
Okay, now that is the Gripen. It was a formation of Gripen that did a break overhead, and they're going to be their flying caps overhead as we're speaking.
So yes. What are they flying?
The Gripens.
Right.
They will just do a break overhead. And
so break it down for us. What is a break overhead? So what are our viewers watching now?
A break overhead is how you fly caps overhead an event, which is combat air patrol.
Right. I mean, if you just look at the audience here when this Gripen goes past, they gasp in awe because of that sound, that powerful sound. Let's take in a bit of that sound. Let's listen in. So the President looks impressed as well. The Gripen is a multi-role fourth-generation fighter aircraft. The aircraft is primarily used to protect the sovereignty, correct, Colonel?
It's primarily used for air defense. As you can see, it is demonstrating how maneuverable it is, how its performance ability, and it is our primary air defense system. It is part of a whole system for air defense.
About some of the training that goes into in order to fly something like that.
As I said earlier, when you start at the flying school of the PC-7, Then you transition onto the Hawk Mark II, and then onto the Gripen. There is a lot of training that goes into it, which entails information flying, low-level navigation flying, tactical flying. And with that, you then, in the end, you qualify as a fighter pilot. There's a lot of high G training that is required. As you can see, the maneuvering, there's a lot of Gs that you experience during that exercise.
So this you can't get enough of it. Our camera operators are doing their best to try and track this down in the sky. It's pretty difficult, and you know, a lot of props go to them for tracking this Gripen. What's Gripen down? What sort of speed is it traveling at?
I don't know the exact, but it tablet Mach speeds at a very high speed, yes.
So it's protecting the sovereignty of South African airspaces through defense missions such as intercepts, I'm told, close air patrols. We're talking about fighters and close air support as well. Also, maritime operations. Tell us a bit more about that.
In terms of maritime operation, what it does is it's got the ability to do reconnaissance at sea in order to track. We know we're busy with operations on the Indian Ocean in terms of anti-poaching, so it can assist with in terms of tracking vessels at sea. And obviously it communicates that to the naval vessels as well in order to capture the pirates if it is like that.
Talk to us about some of the success stories, I mean, in terms of the Indian Ocean and South Africa's role in anti-piracy efforts along the Indian Ocean, and the Air Force playing its role. Talk to us about some of the successes.
I do not have all the details with me, but it's an ongoing operation that we carry out in the Indian Ocean as well. And it involves helicopters as well as fighter jet and transport aircraft.
That's the magnificent Gripen there, just leaving everybody, I guess, here that have gathered for Armed Forces Day 2020 in awe. In terms of training for something like this, Colonel, talk to us about that training process in terms of flying formations, especially when you see these Gripen fighters flying formations. That's not an easy feat, isn't it?
No, it is not.
Yeah.
But when you get to that stage, you've already been prepared enough from the various flying schools, because it requires very fine skills in terms of how you maneuver the aircraft. We do a lot of formation flying, very close to the other aircraft. You do low-level flying, very close. We call it nap of the earth flying, because it's very tactical in order to complete the mission.
The margin of error is
very little.
It's an amazing aircraft. As we look at just to remind you, the aircraft that you're looking at on your screens in a short while is the Gripen. It's a multi-role fourth generation fighter aircraft, and it's primarily used to protect the security. I just can't compete with that sound. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
In terms of the difference between the Hawks and the Hawk, actually, and the Gripen, what is it? That's tough to say.
Yes, I do not have the all that detail in terms of the distinct differences. It is more in the roles that they play operationally. Whereas the Hawk is primarily a trainer, the Gripen is more an operational aircraft for missions.
Internationally, is the Gripen and Hawk pretty common in terms of military fleet around the world?
Yes, it is. It is operated by various countries out there, both the Gripen and the Hawk Mark II trainers.
joined us. We come to you live from Polokwane. It's Armed Forces Day 2020. I'm sitting with Colonel Mechanized, and he's from the South African Air Force. Colonel, with regards to confidence that South Africans should have in particular the Air Force, would you say that South Africans should be secure in terms of knowing that the Air Force has their back and is able to protect them given any circumstances?
Yes, sir. I would say the Civil Air Force is prepared. Although we are in peacetime as it is now, we are continuously training for the various missions that we have to carry out in case of direct threat against the country.
Fine, you will give them like 65. Yeah, this group ones, man. They left my Asia. He wants to talk. Please listen, guys. It's fine. Keep it, the press on just for the case.
All right, you're watching live visuals from Polokwane. We observing Armed Forces Day 2020. Remember, it was proclaimed back in 2012 by then President Jacob Zuma. Now you have the Commander-in-Chief. That's President Cyril Ramaphosa. He just addressed the troops here, the soldiers, who he, well, basically thanked for taking up the call, or answering the call, I guess, to serve the nation. It is indeed a huge responsibility. The mandate is huge to protect this republic as well as its territorial integrity. Colonel Mechanized from the South African Air Force is with me now. What are we witnessing, Colonel?
So what we'll be witnessing today, it will be the handover of the Armed Forces Day for the following event in a year, which will be then from the South African Army to the South African Air Force. So the Chief of the Air Force will be accepting that responsibility now for the next event.
Right. So following this, we're going to have the march, the
Yes.
marching columns as well as the mechanized columns, and as we've been speaking about, is the marching columns are made up of the four arms of service of the South African National Defence Force. One of them is the Air Force. I just want to listen to some of the commentary that's coming from the event. Let's put it up and get the significance of this.
On behalf of the South African National Defence Force, as a symbol of the unity, determination, and strength, the title, Keeper of the Flag, is bestowed upon you. In this capacity, you are hereby charged to ensure that the South African National Defence Force flag is unfurled and displayed in the appropriate manner at the South African Air Force headquarters. The flag is to be treated with respect at all times. During the next commemoration of the Armed Forces Day, the South African Air Force should present the flag in appropriate manner to the South African Navy. The handing over of the scroll, which is the instruction to the display and safekeeping of the flag, will now commence.
Live proceedings from Armed Forces Day 2020. So we're about to get started with regards to the marching columns, and that involves the four arms of service of the South African National Defence Force, namely the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, as well as the medical health services as well. Colonel Moketsi is with me currently here. He's from the South African Air Force. Colonel, you fly helicopters, correct?
Yes, I fly helicopters.
And just remind us with regards to some of the helicopters that we've seen today. I mean, I know about the Oryx, the Roy Falk as well. Tell us a bit more about these machines.
The helicopters that we saw today, it is the Augusta A109 helicopter, which is primarily a reconnaissance platform and provides airborne command and control. We saw also the Oryx helicopter, which is a medium lift helicopter, currently deployed in the DRC under the United Nations. Today was also the Roy Falk, which we spoke about a bit. Right. Also operating the DRC currently is our combat support helicopter. There was also the Lynx maritime helicopter that we saw today, right, which is currently stationed at 22 Squadron in Cape Town at Air Force Base Astraplat. It is our naval asset, which, although it is flown by the 2nd Air Force, it is primarily a South African Navy's asset, which is utilized for anti-surface warfare with the Navy. It is currently on board the Amatola, the Mako Class 2 frigate, the Mako Class frigate, which is currently deployed under Operation Corona in the Indian Ocean.
So are we now proceeding to the marching columns? Is this what we're watching at the moment?
The marching columns will be following shortly after when this is done. As you correctly said earlier, it will be the South African Army carrying their unit colors from the various units across the country. As you know, the history of unit colors, it is the colors that you'll carry into battle, and that's what it is symbolizes today. And it will be followed by the South African Air Force marching columns, which will also be carrying their own unit colors and squadrons, which are currently operational today, followed by the South African Navy columns, and the second military health services. And with that, it will be obviously the Army's mechanized columns, the operational vehicles that they use. This South African Air Force.
Those are those hard-skinned vehicles,
Yes.
right? Combat vehicles.
Yes, sir.
In terms of what part will the South African Air Force play in that regard, in terms of the mechanized?
The mechanized columns are the South African Army vehicles. The South African Air Force, as you know, we primarily carry out air operations. So we do not have a lot of land vehicles operationally. However, you will see behind the South African Air Force columns the firefighting vehicles that will be with. You will also see the TMR, which is a radar system, which is operationally in use with the South African Air Force.
What does it mean for you as an airman, so to speak, a fighter man in this military? You've been in the military since 2002.
Since 2001, I've been in the Second Air Force.
All right. And so you've been part of most of the armed forces days, isn't it, since its inception back in 2012. This is the 8th edition because it happened. The first one was held in 2013. What's been your experience? Is it worth it?
Yes, sir. It is worth it in that it is one of the ways, other than commemorating the SS Mendi, it's a way of communication for the South African Air Force or South African National Defence Force at large to the public, so they can see what assets we have and what we are capable of doing. It instills confidence in the citizens of South Africa. And it's also the region, because the region is also watching, because we conduct external operations. We take part in humanitarian assistance to our neighbors, which is Mozambique, Malawi, for example, recently with the floods. So it is a means of communicating our capabilities as a defense force.
So the march has begun. The president on his feet. He will be taking the salute. And this is the army, if I'm not mistaken, that's passing the president on the podium. Let's take in some of the sights and sounds now of Armed Forces Day 2020. Live visuals of the marching column right here in Polokwane for Armed Forces Day 2020. We're seeing currently the Army component of the marching column. Let me bring in Colonel Albert Mkwebo. He's from the South African Army. Colonel, thank you very much indeed for your time. I guess it must be a proud moment for you sitting here watching your men and women out there.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, I'm very happy today as it's the last day of the Armed Force.
Talk to us about the build-up to Armed Forces Day. One of the big things here was not only to showcase the military's might and what they can do in terms of wartime, battle time, but it's also to give the youth a chance to see the opportunities that's available in the military service, the South African National Defence Force. Would you say that was successful over the past couple of days?
Yes, it was successful. As you know that we're having this event at the Fan Park where the youth were given opportunity to join the army or the Air Force or the Navy or the SAMs.
Yeah. Why is it important, Colonel, for the public to view such displays?
It is important for them so that also, as you mentioned previously, that the youth are the target group, because you must rejuvenate the army. As you see that many soldiers are growing old now, so we must rejuvenate the army and the Air Force and the Navy.
Yeah. And are you getting a sense that the youth are taking up that opportunities and trying to seek a better life in the military, so to speak? Do they see a future for them in the military?
Yeah, given the numbers that we were at the Fen Park, I think, in my view, we are getting there. We are getting that numbers that we needed to join the Defence Force.
I guess there's great fascination with regards to the Army in particular. And, but there's also a lot of misconceptions, bad perceptions with regards to soldiers. People think that soldiers are trained to kill, but they don't realize that there's another side to soldiers. And you don't realize certain things that they do in terms of assisting in natural disasters, for instance. Talk to us about the role other than battling for the South African Army.
Yes, the army is not only for war. The army, as you know, that we are like the departments in the government. We do have got disaster. If there's disaster, you see that we're also helping during the disaster. As for example, the event that we're doing there in Val. So that was the army that was doing those parts.
Right.
So we do have got a variety of activities that we do in the military, not only the army, but also specific with the Air Force, helping also when there's disasters and all that. So there's variety of opportunities.
Right. No doubt you would have heard of late a lot of calls from the public in general in order to bring the South African Army in various communities in order to help put paid to crime in certain areas. In terms of the mandate of the South African Army and the military by extension, do you think that's a good idea? Is the Army generally for that in terms of helping communities?
Yes, it's a good idea, although we are in support role. The mandate is not lying with the army or defense force. It's lying with the police. We are in support in terms of that with regard to the crime. Like you see in Cape Town, we are not in command of that exercise. The police are the one who is in control of that, but we are only in support.
All right. Colonel, thank you very much indeed for your time. I'm going to let you go. Colonel Albert Mkwebo from the South African Army, as we watch the Navy component now come in. Let's take in some of the sound there.
Ladies and gentlemen, the South African Military Health Services.
All right, you were just watching there the men and women in white, the South African Navy. Let me bring in Captain Zamo Khumalo from the South African Navy component commander for the African Forces, Armed Forces Day 2020. Captain, as we were talking earlier on, it's more important, I guess, in particular for the South African Navy, considering the history of Armed Forces Day, established to, in part, honor those who perished on the SS Mendi. Talk to us about this day and the significance of it.
Oh, the significance of this day of the Armed Forces, I must say, as I've mentioned earlier on, it's just to commemorate the men and women who perished in service of this country and that were not initially honored, and also just to keep on keeping the traditions of the South African National Defence Force, while also deploying our forces to ensure that the men and women charged with the responsibility of the safety of this country are trained professionals. So we changed this day armed forces from province to province. Right. Fortunately, this time around, we are here in Polokwane, and they have received us quite well.
Right. That's always important, isn't it? For the public who you defend and protect to have confidence in particular the Navy. The core business of the South African Navy is to fight at sea. But talk to us about your regional reach.
Our regional reach, I must say, we as the South African Navy, we are actually supposed to be able, or we are able actually, to reach all over the world at sea. But at this stage, I must say, what we have been concentrating on for the past couple of years is just our bilaterals and our trilateral agreements with countries like Tanzania and Mozambique in ensuring that the piracy does not come down into our waters. And also we've been doing a lot of exercises here within our coastal waters under the auspices of exercise Operation Corona, in protecting our own waters.
You know, I was talking to a member of the South African Air Force as well, and they act as a support role for the Marine, for the Navy. Talk to us about the successes. Is those bilaterals bearing fruit?
Oh yeah, very bearing fruit. You can see for a couple of years now, the piracy have actually diminished quite a bit within the African continent, more specifically within the eastern coast of Africa. Yeah. So all these trilateral and bilateral agreements with countries on the eastern coast have actually assisted in ensuring that our waters are safe, and all our merchant vessels can safely have a safe passage within our waters.
Talk to us about our fleet and our vessels. How impressive are they?
Oh, they are very impressive. Unfortunately, you won't be able to view all of them here because we are inland, but most of our forces are based in Durban and Simonstown. You're only going to see some of the elements which are of the Maritime Reaction Squadron that are mostly used by those elements, our boarding boats, our riverine patrol boats, our diving boats, and our boarding boats.
Right. So as the South African Navy, you deal with vessels. Obviously, this is a parade on land, but I'm sure that you are featured in this next segment, which is the mechanized column, and this is basically a parade of the military's hard-skinned vehicles. There you see the VIPs are watching on, and earlier on, people were clapping and cheering on the military. I guess it's a good sign, but let's just talk to us about your part in this mechanized column.
Our part in this mechanized column, you will see our elements are going to follow the elements of the South African Air Force. We have a riverine patrol boat which is going to be leading our own convoy, and then followed by our harbor patrol boat, which is normally referred to as an Amakura. Then we have a boarding boat, which is a third in line, and our diving boat. Unfortunately, you won't see all the other elements as earlier said, but this is what we are actually going to be showcasing here. I must say the public got to feel and touch this during our fan park activities that happened between the 14th to the 19th.
Captain, I want you to just pause for a bit. I want to try and bring up the podium sound and get a sense of what's up next.
These are your functional motorbikes. Behind them are operational motorbikes. These motorbikes are used during operations and exercise to patrol the main supply routes, escort VIPs, traffic control, crime prevention, and escort of military convoys. They are mostly used to patrol the borders of our country. When you see them, you must know that you are in trouble. The poachers and undocumented persons will be in trouble when these guys come to you. Ladies and gentlemen, operational motorbikes. The functional police van. These are used in the military police client service centers to transport inmates and personnel that are arrested. They usually use for mobile patrols in the urban areas. Ladies and gentlemen, the functional police vehicles. Behind them, there are functional police vans. They are used to transport inmates and also to arrest those who are naughty. Ladies and gentlemen, functional police vans. The Land Cruiser SUV, they are used at the borderlines and they are used as command vehicles by the commanders in the borders. Land Cruiser SUV. The Land Cruiser pickup, they are also used in the borderlines to escort the members who are undocumented and the rhino poachers that are arrested. Ladies and gentlemen, the Land Cruiser pickup. The Land Rover. The Land Rover is also used as a soft-skin vehicle at the main supply route by the commander of the military police in the borders or during wartime. The Land Rover military police. The Mamba vehicle. These are the vehicles that are used as a hard skin during the main supply routes, exercises, and operations. They also sometimes carry the 12.7 light machine gun. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mamba. And that was your military police.
Ladies and gentlemen, what follows is now the boys and the girls that make sure that the metal meets the mood when it is required. I present to you now the Rattle command vehicle, which is leading these vehicles at the moment. From the east to your right, and they are now leading the artillery regiment. The Rattle infantry fighting vehicle is used for many functions within the DoD today. What you have now is for your forward patrol or forward command post vehicles as used by the observers in the artillery regiment. And directly behind them, you will have your 120 mortar system, which forms part of a battery within the South African Artillery Regiment. These are placed now on the Gecko vehicle. The MS-120 mortar is used for fire support to your forces when conducting operations. Ladies and gentlemen, that was your MS-120 mortar. Right behind them, you will find the Battalier. This is a multiple rocket launcher system, which also provides indirect fire support for your command elements when required. Ladies and gentlemen, this regiment is based in Potchefstroom, and this is your 4th Artillery Regiment. Directly behind your multiple rocket launcher system, you now have the G5 105mm gun system. This is fitted with a 45 cal 105mm weapon system. It is a towed system. It is also part of the artillery regiment, where one battery will consist of the G5s. What is now directly in front of you is your G6 self-propelled system, transported by a Shongololo tank transporter. The gun system of the G6 is the same as the G5 system. However, it provides a very mobile capability to can do force projection and deliver firepower where required. And ladies and gentlemen, that was your artillery regiment from Potchefstroom. And ladies and gentlemen, the vehicle directly in front of you is the Rattle 20mm And also the Rattle 60mm breech loading system is used in the combat role, as I've already informed that many of the units, their commanders will have the Rattle vehicle. Now, approaching the first podium, it is the 35mm gun system from Kimberley at the big hole. This 35mm gun system provides air defense to our forces, and the 35mm system has a capability of engaging and destroying enemy targets at the range of 4 kilometers. Ladies and gentlemen, you will also be impressed by the fact that the air defense artillery made sure that they bring their 35mm guns in numbers to also show you their capabilities. Now, this weapon system can also be applied in the ground role. This weapon system provides high rate of fire in order to can give you fire suppression and destruction of enemy targets. Ladies and gentlemen, use the time to take as many pictures and make as many videos and be proud of your armed forces today. This is one of those rare moments that you have to be very close to your armed force, and it is the intent that you socialize and spend time with your armed forces today. You can see as the people traverse, elevate, and declinate the gun system so that they show you what the system is able to do so that it can be able to provide air defense and destruction of enemy targets or enemy aircrafts. Ladies and gentlemen, Limpopo today is visited.
Live visuals from Armed Forces Day 2020. I want you to notice something very interesting. You see the barrel of this gun currently on your screen. It was lowered when it went past the president. What I'm given to understand, that's called a mechanized salute. So very interesting facts coming out of here. These impressive vehicles showing South Africa's military might to those that have gathered here and watching there at home. We've been talking a bit about, the confidence that South Africans have, and we would like to hear more from you, South Africa, in terms of what do you think about Armed Forces Day 2020 in terms of the benefits for this country. You can send us your thoughts at the agenda_SABC. We'd love to hear from you in terms of, are you convinced by what you've seen that we are indeed in good hands? Remember, the mandate of the South African National Defence Forces to protect the Republic, to protect its territorial integrity, as well as to protect its people. That's you and me. Let me bring in Colonel Albert Mkwebo back into the conversation. He's from the South African Army. Colonel, tell us about some of these vehicles and, in terms of how it ranks in terms of international standards. Talk to us about them.
The vehicles that you see now are the vehicles from the anti-air defense artillery. Those guns that you see, they are the ones that is used to shoot the aeroplanes or any disturbance from the airspace.
I was in 2011, I was in Libya, and I was covering the civil unrest there. And what I've noticed there is those anti-aircraft missile launchers, or the guns, so to speak, right? They were on the back of buckies. You'll often see it in visuals when you're talking about those part of the world in terms of Libya. Talk to us about mounting something like that. Is it secure? Is it meant for, say, for instance, these buckies, those anti-aircraft missiles or guns? Are they meant to be placed in the back of these buckies?
No, they're not meant to be placed on the buckets, but they are only improvising because they don't have that machinery. So they're not part of the government, as you know, that they are fighting the war in the North Africa. So they just improvise to put it on the guns, so that if ever maybe they want to put it, that those vehicles are short, then they can change and put it on the other vehicles. But that is not meant for those vehicles. That is not a military vehicle that you see in those Arab countries.
In terms of the age group of some of these vehicles, these military vehicles that we're looking currently on your screen, how old are they?
No, I cannot just give you. I cannot give you the age, but they always revamp them.
Right.
Yeah, to have a new version of the vehicles that you see. So in terms of the age, I cannot give you the age, but they always revamp them.
You know, I'm always interested in the tanks. We're likely to see them coming through. With regards to the people that you normally see sticking out, protruding, the soldiers that are protruding from the tanks, are they the eyes and ears of the tanks, so to speak?
Yes, the tanks have got a crew. That one that you see on top of the tank is the one who is guiding the movement of the tank. There is a driver that you see. You cannot see it because he's sitting inside the tank there. But that one is just a guide.
It takes a special person to stick out of that in terms of battle time, you would agree. In terms of the training, Colonel, talk to us about some of the training that Army men and women go through in order to be in tip-top shape and battle ready.
The training differs. It differs. As you see the tank, we call it specialization, because if you are a tank driver, that means you will be in the armor corps. If you are in the artillery, that means you will be in the artillery corps. If you are in the intelligence, that means you will be in the intelligence corps. So the training differs, but it doesn't differ from men to women. All of them, they go same training as we speak.
You know, we just saw the president in your shot a short while ago. He is known as the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force. But, Colonel, it doesn't matter who the Commander-in-Chief is, isn't it? Because the South African National Defence Force is above politics, correct?
Yes, the Commander-in-Chief is the President. He's the one in chief of all the arms of service. And in fact, the Defence Force in total. From the minister, then you get the Commander-in-Chief, who is the President, President Ramaphosa, as we speak.
Right. Talk to us, Colonel, about some of the challenges in the South African Army. Where are the critical shortages, would you say?
There's no much critical challenges, but we'll be happy if you can get more money to can service and maintain this machinery. As you can see, that it's a very heavy machinery that you see moving past us here today.
So would you say funding is an issue?
Yes, if we can get more funding for the Defence Force, it will be good.
How is, according to you, the issue of funding, or a lack thereof, preventing you from doing your job effectively?
No, the lack of funding is not preventing us from doing the job. We still maintain the job that we're doing at the end by the capability that we see here today. So the issue of funding is not jeopardizing our job, but if you got more funding, then it will be more so that we can also maintain these capabilities that you see here today.
I was speaking to Lieutenant Colonel Connie Silva earlier on from the Medical Health Services. He's standing next to us here. He's going to come in a short while to talk about the Military Health Services component of the mechanized column, so we'll bring him in a short while ago. But I was talking to him earlier on about, you know, when a soldier is not fighting a war, is not in any battle, or is not in any peacekeeping missions on the continent or conflict resolutions, what do they do?
No, it's not necessary for us to be in the war at all times. No. Because we are busy with we call it continuous training. If we are not in the battle, we are in our bases, but maintaining our training so that we can know what we do. We call it continuous training. So in the base, we do continuous training.
So what does continuous training mean? What happens from Monday to Friday, so to speak?
No, continuous training meaning if you are in the artillery, then you will be training in your artillery corps to maintain, so that you cannot forget what you have learned previously. So we continue as such.
So, Colonel, as we were talking a little bit earlier, these are the tanks, and these are the men that are protruding from those tanks, and we were talking a bit about their role in it. Just for those who have just joined us, these are live visuals of Armed Forces Day 2020. Colonel, talk to us about these tanks and how effective are they in battle, and those people, the soldiers that are protruding from them.
That tank that you see passing us now is called as Elephant Mark 10, Elephant tank. That tank can shoot a distance of maximum 40.5 kilometers from where we're sitting now, as we speak. 40.5 kilometers. Yes, 40.5 kilometers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the one we're currently seeing at the moment?
The one we see there, it's a elephant tank, as I indicated to you. They are carried in the vehicles. We call them shongololos.
You call them shongololos? Okay. And what sort of training? How does one get to drive a tank such as this? Talk to us through the training that one needs to go through in order to navigate something like this.
Although I don't specialize on that, but the training that they're doing it in Bloemfontein. That's where they are housed. Their unit is in Bloemfontein. That's where they are doing their training of the tanks.
So if you're just joining us, these are live visuals from Armed Forces Day 2020. You're having, well, on your screen you see the mechanized column and the various tanks that the South African National Defence Force has, and many that you talk to, on the sidelines are quite impressed in terms of the capabilities of the South African National Defence Force. Colonel, talk to us about the capability, firepower capability demonstrations that has happened over the past couple of days. What went into doing something like that, and what sort of response did you get from the people that you interacted with?
The response was good. As you see that we were having from the Air Force, we were utilizing the Hawks and the Gripens that were fighting there, and also the tanks. But we were just simulating the battlefield, because that range that we were utilizing is not fit for shooting for these main battle tanks that you see here, the Elephant tank that you see. So we were simulating the battle there in that range. But the population or the community, they like that one because it was good for them to see, most especially the night capability demonstration.
The big bangs are always a crowd pleaser, I'm sure. I remember covering Armed Forces Day in KwaZulu-Natal, and as you were saying, those night flares, it's very impressive seeing what our military can do and what they're capable of. So what are we witnessing now, Colonel?
These are the machinery for lifting the mine. Then the mine and then the vehicle that you see there are the people that are responsible for the bomb disposal.
Right. I remember when the president was giving his address, the commander-in-chief, President Cyril Ramaphosa, was saying that I guess it's time to start planting trees instead of planting bombs. And I guess, messages like that and messages and themes that were running through say for instance, the African Union Summit that was recently held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, was silencing the guns as well. How does those kind of themes resonate to men and women on the ground fighting for South Africa?
I think that one was symbolic, because the tree that the president was planting, for all the armed forces that we did, it was the first time for the president to plant a tree, and that tree is the tree of the year, as you saw.
Right.
So it's symbolic, because when the president plants the tree, it means peace.
Symbolism is key, isn't it? Optics is key, because it gives a message to the public that we care, I guess. The president was, apart from talking about planting trees instead of setting of bombs, he was talking about planting trees as mitigation for climate change. one of the issues that the South African National Defence Force, in particular the Army, is involved in is humanitarian efforts as well. Natural disasters, helping out when we have these frequent storms or cyclones, for instance. And it's becoming more and more frequent. Scientists are telling us it's due to climate change in part. Talk to us about the role that the South African Army plays in terms of disaster management.
As you know, in terms of disaster management, the Army plays an important role. They play an important role because if it needs of the people when they are washed away by the rain, or we in the Army were responsible to provide the tents, to give them water, and so that we can house them, because we are responsible for the community.
Colonel, we appreciate your time. Stick around. I want to bring in now the podium sound and learn more about these impressive machines on the ground that we're currently witnessing. This is the mechanized column. We have the marching column, which featured all 4 arms of service of the South African National Defence Force, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Medical Health Service. I'm going to bring in Colonel Connie Silver in a short while. But Colonel, you want to say something very quickly before you
These
go.
are still part of the Army.
Yeah.
The vehicles that you see them here is called the Rattle. So it's still part of the Army that is passing us here today.
Okay. Talk to us a bit about this before I let you go.
This Rattle, the first one that you saw, that it was Rattle, it's called Rattle 12.7, and then the second one that you see is called Rattle 60, and then you go to Rattle 81. Those are the rattles that you see passing us here through the podium of the president.
And what are they mainly used for?
These are the ones that we fought in the battle. That is the vehicles, the lorry that is used by the Army. This we call the queen of the battle. They utilize this vehicle for fighting the war, the Army guys.
Right. All right, Colonel, thank you very much indeed for your time. Appreciate you. Stick around. We will try to bring you back in terms of learning more about this. Let's take some of the podium sound. We're going to bring in very shortly Colonel Connie Silver, Lieutenant Colonel Connie Silver, to talk about the element of the medical health facility. We also got Captain Kumalo here from the South African Navy. We're going to soon see some vessels from the South African Navy in this mechanized column. Stay with us.
Represents the tactical aspects of air defense for the South African Air Force. This radar acts as a force multiplier to improve low-level radar coverage up to the radius of 200 kilometers. Ladies and gentlemen, tactical mobile radar. Following the tactical mobile radar is the hazardous material fire tender, which is an aviation fire truck suitable for the airport or aviation firefighting and rescue, with mass application of foam, water, and extrication powered equipment. Commitment of 4 or more aviation firefighters is needed for proper or best outcomes, with proper personal protective equipment at all times. Ladies and gentlemen, hazardous material fire tender.
Ladies and gentlemen, following the Air Force is the South African Navy Maritime Reaction Squadron boats. The first boat that you see, the green and black one, is known as the RPB, the Riverine Patrol Boat.
All right, currently you're watching live visuals from Armed Forces Day 2020. We're coming to you live from Polokwane, and this is the Navy segment of the mechanized column. Captain Zamo Kumalo, the South African Navy component commander for the Armed Forces Day 2020, is with me currently. Captain, what are we witnessing?
What are you witnessing right now on your screens? You are seeing one of our riverine patrol boats, commonly referred to us as the Crocodile. This boat was built here in South Africa. We refer to it as a high-speed craft. It has a crew of about 5 people and assault team of about 10 people, so the capacity of this boat is about 10 members. Following that boat, you also saw the Namakura, which is our harbor patrol boat, also used basically for the roles of patrolling the harbor, can also be used for the roles of search and rescue, and also just the short coastal patrols within the coast, also used intensively for humanitarian aid. Following that boat, the Namakura, you also saw the boarding boat, also built here in South Africa in Cape Town. The boarding boat actually is used intensively also for humanitarian aid, also used for boarding by our Maritime Reaction Squadron, our boarding team. At the back, as you've asked me about the rubber duck earlier on, I'm thinking
yes.
This is now what you see is a 6-meter rib, which is a rigid hull-inflated boat.
Yeah.
It's basically used for diving operations,
right?
And it can also be used to transport members from ship to ship or ship to shore, or vice versa.
I've been on one of those, and it's not a pleasant ride at all. But
yeah.
it's quite fast as well.
It's quite fast. Used intensively also just for intercepting anti-poaching operations.
Captain, thank you very much indeed for your time. Stick around. We're going to get more insight in a short while. I want to bring in now Lieutenant Colonel Connie T. Silva. He's from the South African Military Health Services, 2nd Command Military Health Training Formation. Lieutenant Colonel, what are we witnessing now?
Blaine, what you see now is the pride and joy of the South African Military Health Service, the Umfezi vehicle. We've got 2 conversions of the Umfezi vehicle. The one is a command vehicle, and the other one is then converted into an ambulance where we can carry up to 4 patients in stretchers and 2 seated down. The one that is on your screen right now is the low bed that we use to project some of our heavy equipment into theater. And the ones that is passing by, the white ones, is the Casper ambulances that we have on a low bed system. Then the one on your screen is also one of our heavy vehicles, and we call that the ABBA system. Those trucks are used to get containers that is converted into theaters and those type of operating rooms that we use then in theater. And we make use of those heavy trucks calling the ABBA system to get them into theater. The one that is on your screen right now, it's Umfezi as well, but that conversion is in a command vehicle. That is where you will find the commander of the medical forces that deploys.
You know, of late, and what's very topical currently is with regards to the coronavirus, or the official name COVID-19. It's causing a great anxiety around the world. We had a first case reported in Africa, in Egypt recently. If it happens that it lands on our shores, the South African Military Health Service, will they be involved in terms of trying to contain the virus in the country, in terms of, going in terms of testing, in terms of monitoring temperature, the thermal equipment that we normally use in order to test temperature? Would you guys be involved in things like that?
Yes, Blaine, we will definitely be involved, but that will be led by the Department of Health. Yeah. And should they require our assistance and we get tasked to do so, then we will deploy our resources to augment what is already on the ground from the Department of Health. But within our capabilities, we will definitely be able to assist in a situation like that, yes.
All right, that wrapped up the mechanized column. We had the marching column, where we had hundreds of soldiers in their various units marching towards the president taking the salute, and currently we have the president seated there. But this is basically the tail end of what is happening. The National Ceremonial Guard is heading towards the president now, and from what I understand, Lieutenant Colonel, are we going to get the anthem and the gun salute once more?
Yes, yes. After this, we will get the national anthem as well. Yes.
All right. As we wrap things up, I want to, take in some of the sights and sounds of Armed Forces Day 2020. Let's listen in.
Open! Order! Push! 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 Good! Good!
Ladies and gentlemen, you are requested to stand for the playing of the national anthem. Military members are requested to salute. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated until the podium group has withdrawn. You are further requested to remain seated until the Guard of Honor, Band, and Flag Company has marched off.
We are ready.
Well, that's how we end things right here in Polokwane Armed Forces Day 2020. This is the 8th edition of Armed Forces Day. It was proclaimed back in 2012 by then President Jacob Zuma to honor the men and women who have answered the call to serve this republic, to defend its territorial integrity, and also to protect and defend its people. As you see, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force, heads out. That's how we say goodbye from here. Next stop is in Mpumalanga, and after that we're told that all all 9 provinces would have been serviced, I guess one would say, by the South African National Defence Force. All 9 provinces would have had a chance to see the military might of the South African National Defence Force. I'm going to hand it back to studio. Stick around. I'll get you a quick wrap on Point. Until then, take care.
And if you've